you're a heavy social user yourself. I know others at Outreach are as well. Just kind of at a really basic level, what is sales today or going forward without social? I mean, is it still an early adopter thing, or do you see this from a seller, from an enablement standpoint, as really just being, table stakes?
I see social as table stakes, absolutely. But you still see a lot of companies there that haven't really optimized the format for interaction and engagement on the selling and buying side. And I think that's really unfortunate. But look, social's not new. It's been around. I can't remember when it was like 2011 or something that LinkedIn coined social selling, if I can remember right. But when you think about the world today of B2B sales, you are not going to be having the amount of in-person meetings that we've all had in the past. I think COVID just simply accelerated the trend that was out there, which is you've got a bunch of digital natives, millennials now, who are the predominant buying influencers and buying committees and so on and so forth. These folks, not to overgeneralize, are very comfortable with efficiency and engaging on a range of different formats, whether that's LinkedIn or Twitter or WhatsApp or whatever makes sense for where you reside in the world. And so any seller that's not using that format is putting themselves at a pretty significant disadvantage. And any company that doesn't arm their sellers with a social engagement tool as well as training is putting their sales team at a disadvantage.
How do you think about, to your earlier comment about LinkedIn coining social selling? Some companies think about it that way. Some think about it, social engagement. Others, I think, just consider it to be a part of kind of their overall, sales enablement strategy and kind of toolkit. How would you describe social selling? Is that the term you'd even use? And what do you think some of the core tenets are associated with that?
Well, first of all, I don't like the term at all. And I tried to change it when I wrote the first wave that covered the category several years ago. And I called it sales social engagement because I think it is just sort of table stakes. It's another channel, another format, another opportunity to deepen and extend the relationships you have, not only in your community, but also in your prospect and customer target list. So for me, it's just an integral part of interacting and engaging, and you're not actually selling. And I think that's where, when people get it wrong, they are selling. I can't, you and I probably had this conversation a million times, but I'll link in, someone will link in with me and, I'm out there, I'm very involved. So I typically look to see, do we have mutual connections? If we do, then I'll accept the invite. And then I want to say 5 out of 10 of those folks, after I link in, will immediately push a sales pitch to me. And it's like, folks, we don't have a relationship. Like, we don't really know each other. I extended you a courtesy. I'm happy to have you in my network. But, Jill Rowley coined this phrase, which is, you've got to deposit into the ATM before you start taking out. And I see that. And it's like 10 years later, why are people doing that, Cameron? I know you asked me the question, but I'm asking you back now.
Well, I think it's a buffet, right? I mean, I guess that's my view. I think it continues to be surprising to me. First of all, I agree with what you're saying, and I think this is kind of the balance that we as a company continue to navigate with, our existing clients, with companies that are thinking about arming and enabling their sales team with, tools and training and whatnot. Is, what's everyone wants to reach that end target. And I think there's just, there's a lot of opportunities to connect with folks. I can send you a connection request. I can engage on your content. I can do all these kind of things. And I don't know, maybe it's just, sales immaturity or a misunderstanding of, I think to your point, people, I mean, I guess I'd ask the question back to you, which is like, do you think the same percentage of people would do that at a network event if they were in person?
I don't, because I think, sometimes there's a perceived anonymity on social platforms,
Yes.
but certainly not in a business platform like LinkedIn, where it's definitely a business network. But that's such a good point. I think you would feel so socially awkward that you would just never do that. But for some reason, people aren't making that connection and they're just thinking, oh, I've got another person to push this through the pipe. And it's actually quite damaging to your brand to do that. And I think the reason it is perpetuated is because there's a lack of training out there, which I think is essential.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and I think therein lies kind of part of the challenge is social is really conducted at the individual level, right? And it's a constant practice, right? It's something that's in facilitation of your efforts, right? To perhaps develop a prospect or win an opportunity. And I think from a corporate management standpoint, right? That's what managers are looking at. They're looking
Right.
at like, here's our target. This is what we've got to close. And the balance, the counterbalance needs to really be what you're describing, which is kind of the individual almost to a degree, kind of recognizing that this is their professional brand. To get to the end state, they need to really control that, build that themselves. I think it's just another way to establish and cultivate relationships. But I think we see that as a bit of the challenge, is kind of the corporate objective of like, get out there and sell. Here's a tool set. Here's
Right.
some new
Go
things.
do it. But
Yeah.
I'm going to actually push back on you a little bit on this one and turn the question back to you. Back in the day, we'd have pipeline reviews and the salesperson kind of get beat up by the sales manager. And, the pressure to hit the quota was always there, even, 10 years ago. And the job of the salesperson is kind of to filter that pressure that they're getting from management and deliver it back to the customer in a way that helps to foster the relationship and drive urgency if that's what's needed at that particular point in time. But you would never like just come out from a pipeline review and then be like, turn that same level of energy onto the customer, right? Your job as a seller is to be empathetic and help solve problems and be that strategist around how you're going to get the deal into the company. So I still think, there could be some more finesse than what we see out there.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think the thing is, the individual has to arrive at that conclusion himself. Like you as an example, even though you're not in a selling role, this user of ours at Workday, a sales leader I talked with a few days ago. Another friend we highlighted over at HighSpot, who's in their sales organization. These organizations have obviously, they've bought our tools, so there's been some level of investment. There's maybe some certification or kind of direction. There's some program management and whatnot, but they've made the independent decision themselves that as a professional, for them to succeed in this role at this company, at a future role in another company, this is just part of their routine. And kind of to your point, God help anyone who's coming out of a pipeline review meeting and then just hitting social cold, like this is like years in the making, you and your network and the engagement that you get on your posts. And, it's I don't know, it's a slow but constant thing, that of course, once you reach some critical mass, starts to actually kind of
Well, then
generate.
you start to have some real influence. And I work with
Yes.
some of our enterprise sellers here at Outreach and talk with them about how to start to think about their territories and building a community
Yes.
of people who have similar challenges, similar goals, similar objectives, maybe similar personas. And then you start to really curate that content that's going to resonate with that community. And then the next step is you see a lot of polls out there, which is a whole other topic. I'm not sure I'm a big fan, but at least you're driving engagement, right? So you're providing a forum for like-minded folks to interact, engage, learn, educate, and do digital good deeds, which is the best part of social media. We all have heard about the negative sides, but that's really the great part of it.
So given everything that we just talked about, do you think doing social right assuming we can get someone's head turned in the right direction, that like, look, this is about you, this is about your brand, this is about, the entirety of your professional life cycle, your success in your current role, creating future opportunities, et cetera. You think it's hard? Like, if you accept that, if you're not going to go out and just try
Right.
to, be transactional with everyone, like, how much of your time does it take? Do you think that are
Well,
the actions you're taking very complicated?
no, it's really easy. I mean, it's like it's just part of my cadence because you can tell from, and I do have tools that I use, but much of what I post is very personal. So I do use some of the tools to give me reach and scale. And then I'll go in and make very personal, authentic posts. But look, it depends on how you think about it. Like people are like, oh, I just don't have time, 2 hours at the end of the day on Friday. Well, it's not like Salesforce Friday. It's just part of your job. It's part of your regular cadence. What I tend to do is, I don't know if you find this with your clients, but I do almost all my social off my handheld, even though I'm home a
Hmm.
lot. And when I was traveling a lot, I just use the dead time when I was in the airplane waiting to take off, or at the terminals when you don't really feel like digging into work, but you still want to be productive and just get everything out there. And I actually love it. I'm an intellectually curious person. I want to see what people think. I want to help. And it's not onerous at all for me. But I will say, having been a someone who carried the bag, but both at the individual contributor level as well as owned the number at the exec level, time is not your friend when you're a salesperson. And so I think that is
Hmm.
why tools like Everyone Social and some of the others that are out there are absolutely essential, right? Because you need to create some efficiency around how you want to post, and you just build it into your cadence. It's just like anything else that you'd be doing in my mind.
Let me ask another question, because I think this is a topic of debate and kind of a horizon for even folks who are very kind of socially engaged. At least the sellers that I talk to, is the question of personal, right? Like, is there a boundary? Where is that boundary?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've gotten to a place, certainly in America and broadly globally, where there's a bifurcation of values. There's serious problems, from a war in Eastern Europe and Russia to climate change to um, a Supreme Court that's been minimized and marginalized, to people who don't understand the full impact of their vote and what that means. And so we're at a place now where I think there's more and more acceptance around being fairly authentic around who you are, and
Hmm.
more personality and personal elements to your post, as well as putting a stake in the ground around what your company and um, your values and your culture stands for. I know Manny Medina has made many posts, and just recently, and after the repeal of Roe, there was a post that he made, and he made his position very clear, and our policies very clear. And there was a lot of trolling and vitriol, and I think we're at a place where um, passions and differing opinions are running really high, and you don't usually see that in LinkedIn, but I think we're starting to see a little bit more of that. I don't feel like I've totally answered your question, but that was it's on my mind right now.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I think it's on everyone's mind, perhaps regardless which side of any issue that you stand on. But I mean, you and I have known each other for a number of years, and at the same time, I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit better, even just being connected with you on LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
through the things that you've shared that aren't totally about kind of thought leadership and outreach and whatnot. And so I don't know that there's, I mean, I guess if I didn't ask that question with the intention of giving my own answer, but at a pure data level, and I feel like this is a little bit kind of cold, just in terms of like what performs, personal performs. And
Personal,
many.
yeah, I agree with you.
And many years, yeah, I was just going to add, many years ago, we had a client who did a very rigorous review of their sales team's use of social. They had a bunch of input and data from LinkedIn. I don't even think LinkedIn does this anymore. It was like with a consultant, an internal kind of sales navigator oriented consulting group. And basically the finding is it related to like what you're sharing and how it was impacting sales velocity, et cetera, was like, it's about the engagement. It's not about the content, right? It's like, did you make that connection with the person through a common interest? Are you building trust, whatever else? And of course that doesn't have to be, it's a means to, what you're sharing is a means to an end, right?
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a fine line. Like you have to, and this goes back to why I do think some education and training is important, right? So LinkedIn is a business platform, a business format. And yet the business world now is becoming more open to people fully sharing their authentic selves, to talking about what they value. I did some research with Forrester Outreach sponsored research where we asked 200 B2B buyers a range of different questions. And one of them was really around what you want to see in terms of diversity within your supplier sales team. So, we're starting to see that buyers are going to evaluate, does my selling team reflect the world around me? Well, everyone kind of wants to see that. 77% of buyers said, I would consider not moving forward with a supplier if their values didn't align with mine, a little bit lower if it didn't align with my company. And so as you start to see some of these institutions devolve, whether it's the legislature or the Supreme Court or whatever it is, I think people are now turning to businesses to provide that North Star in some ways. So that really opens the door in my mind to a level of authenticity and personalization that I might not have been willing to do 10 years ago.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Say one other thing, which is completely, well, not very controversial, I don't think, but my sister is a former middle school teacher and she had to leave the teaching profession for a range of reasons, which probably I don't need to go into for anyone here. I think people get it. And I just posted this Wall Street Journal article about teachers moving into tech and my thoughts around how the skills might be transferable. Well, lo and behold, I mean, I have never gotten so much engagement on a post ever before, with so many different people wanting to reach out and help teachers and teachers who've gone into tech and what works and what doesn't work, and just broader empathy for why teachers actually have to leave the profession right now because they're undervalued and underpaid, and the conditions are untenable in many cases. So it is really interesting.
Yeah, I think, everything you just said, resonates with what we see, what we're thinking about. At Outreach, you may have this kind of, you may be seeing this with some of your customers. We have a variety of customers that kind of put it back on us and, require us to kind of share our current status plans as it relates to D&I and other value aspects of who we are, our mission, what we're trying to do, et cetera. And it's important. I was just thinking about it this morning. I mean, there's a lot of discussion just within the startup world, I think, around just mission in general, right? Yep. Like, why are we all here doing what we're doing? Which, is, I think, a critical thing to answer, even just kind of on an internal basis. But I know you're very focused on the sales organization, and the execution gap is something that you're kind of you've been touching on frequently. I'm guessing you were the one who kind of coined it to begin with. How do you think about the relationship between sales and marketing? How is that changing, and how can marketing contribute towards organizations, getting higher within that range?
Yeah, so thank you. Real quickly, the sales execution gap is a term that we've coined at Outreach, and what it really refers to is the gap in revenue that an organization delivers versus what they could deliver if they were fully optimized. And optimized means having the right technology platforms and tools, enablement, talent strategies, and so on. And what we've found is, sellers are spending only 23% of their time actually in selling related activities, and managers are only spending 14% of their time on coaching. So if you're able to close this gap between non-value activities versus higher value activities, you can drive up revenue very, very quickly. And I think it's incredibly important right now because we're in a world where many of the folks listening to this may have to do the same or more with less individuals and less headcount. And so that's what we work with organizations to help them close.
Question just before you get into the marketing side of things. If they're only spending 24% of their time doing selling related activity, what are they doing the other 66 or 76%
these are the companies
of the
that don't have access to top tier technology, so they don't have revenue intelligence. So they're entering in things into the system. They're booking meetings manually on their calendar. They're doing social posts one at a time. They're running around trying to find content in their email inbox versus a single source of truth. I could go on and on, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So
it's hard to remember that world, but yeah, okay.
You remember now. Yeah.
Yes.
So then, so to your question on marketing sales. And so when I was an analyst at Forrester, we would call this the topic that just keeps on giving, because it's a topic that us as consultants, we would just constantly get paid to run around the world and talk to people about how they could bridge the gap, close those silos, operate off of a single source of data truth. And it just never seemed to happen. But I think we're now being driven by the buyer. And I wrote a report probably 5 years ago that said marketing, B2B buyers mandate. I think it was like marketing and sales alignment. It was probably a cheekier topic, cheekier title. I can't remember. It's been a while. But the point is, your CEO can tell you to work together. You can know your board can tell you, your comp can kind of try to drive you, but marketers and sellers have a little bit of different DNA. Oftentimes they have different goals and compensation. All of that is sort of mechanical process stuff that can be fixed. But the reality is, I think the buyer is bringing this organization, these functional areas of the business closer together, because buyers are doing more and more on their own, Cameron, as you know, right? So they're going to peer review sites, they're downloading digital content, they're going and playing with a ROI calculator on your website, they're doing a sales meeting, they're doing a small event in Napa, whatever it is, it's nonlinear. But at a certain point, they really do want to talk to a salesperson. And my research shows that even if you're in a kind of a high volume transactional type of sale, they do value this salesperson's experience. Well, as sellers have less and less direct time with buyers, I believe you're going to start to see marketing and sales come together into one organization, because really it's hard to say, because buyers are doing so much more on their own. The stuff that would typically be owned by marketing now sort of spans both, although much of that engagement is done digitally. So I was at a conference in Atlanta last year, and I shared with folks what I thought the new CRO role looked like, the new CMO role looked like, and it started to look kind of the same. Like in the past, the CRO would be that big deal closer, that guy that would jump on the plane and fly to Singapore and, get that done. They wanted, take people out to dinner, rev up the team. And I'm not saying those things aren't important, but now what you're finding is heads of sales are much more operationally focused. The ones who are successful understand data. They do have a working knowledge of what technology can do and what that lever is to helping them execute their go-to-market plans. And so I think you're going to start to see marketing report to sales, sales report to marketing. It could be soft, it could be hard, but as that actual selling time narrows, you'll see smaller selling organizations and marketing and sales sort of consolidate, I believe.
Yeah, you've gone deeper in this. Our experience is our own and working with our clients. And as I shared with you yesterday evening, I've had more conversations with CMOs recently than I think I've ever had. We're seeing them as the primary sponsor of the programs that we're involved with at clients. And more often than not, it's CMO saying, we're starting with sales, right? Like, we recognize there's an opportunity to, get all of our employees activated and really drive, more kind of market awareness, share of voice, and those sorts of things. But, and I think in part driven by kind of current economic conditions, they want to make sure that they are giving sales, what they need to be effective on a one-to-one basis, and doing it at leverage, right? That's how we talk about it internally, like what you just described of like CRO being, the kind of key deal kingmaker versus, being more operational now is just, how do we leverage this mass of people who, in some way, shape, or form, some more capable than others, some more developed than others, but they all need stuff in order to make connection and develop their network and meet the buyer where they want. I thought one of the interesting things, and this might be a little bit of an older study that you put out, was kind of number one desired place to connect for the buyer was, digital, kind of a, Zoom meeting or something like that. Yeah. But an in-person meeting was still quite high, and it sounds like you're
just saying, third. Like, it was third. So first was a Zoom meeting. Second was phone, which I thought was fascinating. Third was in-person meeting. So, I don't think the in-person meeting goes away, but what you're seeing is that buyers value much greater efficiency in their decision-making process. So the first 3 to 5 meetings, maybe they're done off of Zoom, and maybe you all get together at some point, or you get together in events. I think we're going to see less sort of one-to-one selling situations or one-to-many selling on site at headquarters, and more, we're all getting together at events, either smaller curated events or large events. I went to the Forrester B2B marketing and sales event in Austin this spring. And one company that I admire quite a bit, they tasked their sellers with doing 200 sales meetings in and around that event. So I think you'll see more things like that. I'm not sure if we got a little bit far afield of your question, but
no. I thought that, I think it's, the Venn diagram is, moving. I think the overlap is increasing, and at least from what we're seeing very senior marketing leadership thinking about the needs of the individual seller, which I think is really interesting. The counterbalance to that was talking with one of a sales leader at a public, I think, market cap, I'm probably it's in the tens of billions, B2B SaaS, and his criticism was like, look, we continue to do these brand things. We sponsor F1. We do those, we spend all this money on ads and things. And it's like, that's not doing anything for me. Yeah. And this is a guy who worked at some really, really great companies over his career and who takes social very seriously. One final question. What are sales teams going to be focused on? What are they going to be investing, do you think, over this kind of recessionary cycle, 12, 24, 36 months, whatever kind of the timeline is? What are the priorities going to be in your view?
Yeah, I think number one, I think sales leaders now do understand the impact that technology can have on driving greater efficiencies. And we're all going to have to focus on efficiency and effectiveness in the next 24 months. The other thing is that we've moved in terms of the sales technology landscape from a period of multiple point solutions where everyone's sort of trying out what's working and experimenting with that, to consolidation, which happened in 2021, where there was massive consolidation, both organic and inorganic development and additions of capabilities onto sales technologies. Now, I think we're full on with a period we call platformization. I call platformization. I think Gartner calls it sales tech mayhem, but it's really, for me, it's just been experimentation, consolidation, and platformization. And now there will be a few winners, of which I believe Outreach is leading the pack, who provide a full suite of capabilities in a platform across the entire revenue cycle. So all the activities that you need to drive in the revenue cycle, from deal origination to demos, to sales meetings, to forecasting, and so on and so forth, we'll be able to provide that capability in a system that sellers actually want to use and don't have to do manual data entry like they did with CRM. And you'll start to see companies really evaluate their sales tech stack to see where they have duplicative items and where they might be able to get capabilities through a broader platform play, which will provide greater efficiencies in the negotiating and management of the vendor, as well as cost efficiencies and just having a couple of deep relationships versus a bunch of point solutions that you have to manage and be a systems integrator with. And then the final piece is it's all about the data, Cameron, right? Having the ability to capture data between buyers and sellers that happens at every critical juncture across the entire customer lifecycle and store that accurate data in a single source of truth, which is a CRM, that will actually be completely transformative for buying and selling motions.
I would say, I'm just about to jump onto a call, and I know that is literally going to be the topic of this with a senior level sales leader at a giant Fortune 100 company. But it's the same topic of conversation with the CMOs. I think like the platformization, et cetera, I agree with that. And, it's something that we're very much thinking about as a business is how we navigate that, because we are a point solution and that's, really not going to change. But data, it's just, I'm sure we've got a ways to go in terms of like how well people are actually able to put this data to use. But there is
it's the data. It's just absolutely, data is absolutely magical. And we have to talk more about the marketing and sales piece. I have so much more, but I know you're late for a sales call, and that trumps everything. So I don't want to keep you any longer.
Mary, it's great to see you. Thank you for taking some time. It's so much fun talking to you. It's
always a pleasure. I can't wait to see you out in Seattle.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Social at Scale podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please be sure to subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, please let me know. You can access past episodes on our site at everyonesocial.com/podcast. As always, please feel free to connect with me directly on Twitter or LinkedIn, and look forward to seeing you next time.